I almost didn't walk through the door. 2 weeks earlier, I was standing at my husband's funeral, listening to a pastor talk about eternity while my brain screamed that this wasn't supposed to be real. 2 weeks earlier, I still had someone to text when the grocery store was out of oat milk. 2 weeks earlier, I still had a future that made sense. Now I was sitting in my car outside my sister's house, staring at pastel balloons tied to the mailbox and a giant sign that read, "Happy first birthday, Noah." It felt obscene, life celebrating itself so loudly when mine had just collapsed. But my phone buzzed with a message from my mom. "Please come." It would mean a lot. Your husband would want you there. That sentence did it. It always did. So I took a breath, wiped my eyes, grabbed the gift bag from the passenger seat, and stepped into a backyard full of forced smiles and uncomfortable pity. I barely had time to set the gift down before my sister, Lauren, clinked a spoon against a glass. The sound cut straight through the chatter. "Everyone, can I have your attention for just a moment?" Something in her tone made the hairs on my arms stand up. Too confident, too rehearsed, she shifted her baby higher on her hip and looked straight at me. "I think it's time the truth came out," she said. The yard went quiet. "My son isn't who you think he is," Lauren continued. "Noah is actually my brother-in-law's child." I felt the ground tilt. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered my name. My mother sucked in a sharp breath like she'd been punched. Lauren reached into her purse and pulled out a folded document, holding it up like a prize. "And before he passed," she added, "he updated his will. As Noah's biological son, he's entitled to half of the house." Half of my house. The one my husband and I had spent years paying for, renovating, planning our future in. Every single pair of eyes swung toward me, waiting for the moment I'd break. Waiting for tears. Screaming. Collapse. And that's when the most ridiculous thing happened. I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing. Not because it was funny, because it was so deeply, spectacularly wrong that my brain didn't know how else to react. "Oh," I said evenly, forcing my voice to stay calm. "I see." Inside, something cold and steady clicked into place. Before I go any further, I should probably introduce myself. My name is Noemi. I'm 35 years old, and until 14 days ago, I was married to the love of my life. I know how this sounds. A grieving widow, accused in public of being cheated on, about to lose half her home to a baby that supposedly isn't even her nephew. But here's the thing Lauren didn't know. The reason my hands were steady, the reason my voice didn't shake, the reason I almost laughed in her face, this wasn't shocking to me, because my husband and I had already prepared for exactly this kind of betrayal. And by the time my sister finished her little announcement, she had unknowingly destroyed her own life right in front of everyone. Lauren had always liked an audience. Growing up, she was the one who cried the loudest, laughed the hardest, and somehow always ended up in the center of whatever room we were in. If something happened to me, it happened to her too, just louder and with more witnesses. Our parents used to joke that she was just expressive. I learned early that expressive was code for never being told no. Standing in her backyard that afternoon, watching her soak in the stunned silence she'd created, I realized this moment wasn't spontaneous at all. This was a performance. Timed, rehearsed, delivered with maximum damage. I could feel my mother's eyes burning into the side of my face, waiting for me to crack. My father had gone rigid beside the picnic table, his jaw clenched like he was trying to hold the family together with his teeth. Lauren mistook my calm for shock. She smiled wider. "I know this is a lot to take in, Noemi," she said, lowering her voice just enough to sound compassionate. "But I didn't want you finding out later, from lawyers or strangers. I thought you deserved to hear it from me." That almost made me laugh for real. I looked around the yard, at the neighbors I barely knew, at her friends whispering behind their cups, at my parents, humiliated and confused. "You thought my husband's funeral was too late?" I asked quietly. Lauren's smile twitched, just for a second. "I didn't say that," she replied. "But Adam wanted Noah protected, and now that he's gone, I have to do what's right for my son." She handed the document to my mother instead of me, another calculated move. "Let Mom read it. Let Mom be convinced first." My mother's hands shook as she unfolded the paper. Her eyes skimmed the page, then widened. It looks official," she murmured. "There's a signature." Lauren nodded eagerly. "He did it last year, quietly. He didn't want to hurt you, Sam, but he knew the truth." The word truth landed like an insult. I stepped forward then, finally taking the paper. It was a single page, typed, poorly formatted, legal language that tried too hard, like someone Googled last will and testament at 2 in the morning. And the signature. Close, but wrong. Adam signed everything the same way. Always. He was meticulous about it. The angle of the A, the way the pen lifted between letters. I'd watched him sign contracts at our kitchen table for years. This wasn't his. I folded the paper neatly and handed it back to Lauren. "Thank you for showing me," I said. That was when the confusion started. That's it?" she asked. "You don't have questions?" "Oh, I have questions," I replied. "Just not ones I'm going to ask here." Her eyes narrowed. "This affects you, Noemi. You don't get to just walk away." I met her gaze, steady and unblinking. "Watch me." I turned to my parents, kissed my mother's cheek, and whispered, "I'll call you later." Then I walked out. Behind me, the party disintegrated. I heard voices rising. Someone asking, "Is this real?" Someone else, saying my name like a prayer. I didn't stop walking until I was inside my car with the doors locked. That's when I laughed. It came out sharp and breathless, halfway between hysteria and rage. I laughed until my chest hurt, until tears blurred the windshield. Because Lauren's story wasn't just cruel. It was impossible. Adam and I met 9 years ago at a continuing education seminar in Santa Fe. I was there for work. I run my own project management consultancy. He was there because his firm had sent him to speak on risk mitigation. He spilled coffee on my notebook during the first break, apologized so profusely that I couldn't help smiling, and somehow ended up walking me to lunch. We were inseparable within weeks. We married 3 years later in a small ceremony near Taos, surrounded by red cliffs and people who actually knew us. No drama, no spectacle, just love. And yes, we tried for kids. For a long time, when it became clear that road wasn't going to open for us, we grieved it privately. Then we adjusted. We built a life that fit the reality we had, not the fantasy everyone else expected. That reality included doctors, specialists, hard conversations, and one procedure Lauren knew nothing about. 2 years before Noah was even conceived, Adam had undergone a surgery that made it medically impossible for him to father a child. Not unlikely, not difficult, impossible. We didn't tell anyone, not my parents, not his. After years of invasive questions and unsolicited advice, we decided our medical history was ours alone. Lauren's entire claim collapsed under that single fact, and Adam, being Adam, hadn't stopped there. 6 months after that surgery, he looked at me across our kitchen table and said, "If anything ever happens to me, I don't want you dealing with chaos on top of grief." The next week, he updated his will. Properly. Legally. With witnesses. He also did something else. Something I hadn't thought about until I pulled into my driveway that afternoon and sat in silence, hands resting on the steering wheel. Lauren had once tried to cross a line with him, and Adam had seen her coming long before I ever did, which meant what she'd just done wasn't desperation. It was escalation. And if she thought I was going to hand over half my life because she staged a backyard performance with a fake document, she had gravely underestimated both of us. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of what Lauren said, but because of what she didn't know. Around 2 in the morning, I got out of bed and stood in the hallway, staring at the framed photo from our wedding. Adam's arm was around my waist, his forehead resting against mine, like the rest of the world had politely stepped aside. "You planned for this," I whispered to the empty house. "Didn't you?" The next morning, I drove straight to the bank. The branch sat on the corner of a quiet street in Sedona, all warm stone and tinted windows. Adam and I had been coming here for years. The manager, a gray-haired woman named Elise, recognized me immediately. Her face softened when she saw me. "I'm so sorry, Noemi," she said gently. "Take all the time you need." She led me into a small private room and slid the metal box across the table. I opened it with hands that didn't shake. Inside was exactly what Adam promised me would be there. First, his real will. Not a single page. Not typed at home. A fully executed document, notarized, witnessed, filed, leaving everything to me. No contingencies. No secret children. No ambiguity. Second, medical records. Detailed. Clinical. Dates, signatures, post-op confirmations. The procedure that made Lauren's entire story biologically impossible. Third, a thin black notebook. I exhaled slowly as I opened it. Adam had never been dramatic. He didn't journal about feelings. What he did was document facts. Dates. Times. Exact words. Lauren's name appeared on the first page. 3 years earlier. The night she came over for dinner while I was stuck on a work call. The way she'd sat too close. The comments she made once she thought they were alone. The text messages that followed. The boundaries he'd set. The number he eventually blocked. Page after page, calm and precise. In case this ever matters, he'd written at the top. At the bottom of the box was an envelope with my name on it. I didn't expect it to hit me as hard as it did. Inside was a single handwritten letter. Noemi, if you're reading this, I didn't get the chance to protect you in person. I'm sorry for that. I hope this is unnecessary. But if someone tries to hurt you using my absence, I need you to know this. You are not imagining things. You are not overreacting. Trust yourself. Use what's here. And never feel guilty for defending your life. I love you. Always. I sat there and cried, not the quiet kind. The ugly, gasping kind that leaves you exhausted afterward. Then I wiped my face and got practical. That afternoon, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to the attorney who'd handled Adam's estate. The second was to a private investigator he'd once recommended just in case. 3 days later, the picture was clear. Lauren was drowning. Credit cards maxed. Personal loans. Medical bills from Noah's hospital stay. An eviction notice taped to her door. And the baby's father? Gone. Moved across state lines. Minimal support. Sporadic at best. She hadn't announced her lie in that backyard out of grief. She'd done it because she was out of options. And she'd already told people it was coming. Text messages to friends. Screenshots. Jokes about finally getting what she deserved. About how I'd fold once. I realized how bad it would look. Reading them felt worse than the accusation itself, because it meant she'd planned to destroy my marriage after my husband was already dead. I didn't want revenge. I wanted control. So I called Lauren. We need to talk, I said. Come by tomorrow. Just you. She sounded smug, relaxed, like she thought the hardest part was over. See? She said lightly. I knew you'd come around. The next day, she sat across from me in my living room, confident, composed, already rehearsing her victory speech. And one by one, I took that confidence apart. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult her. I slid the medical records across the table, then the real will, then the notebook, then the text messages. The silence that followed was the loudest sound I'd heard since the hospital. Her face went white. For a long time, she said nothing. Then she cried, not performative tears, real ones, fear-soaked, desperate. I didn't know what else to do, she whispered. I'm about to lose everything. That didn't give you the right to take mine, I said quietly. She nodded. I know. I could have ended her right there. Instead, I made a different choice. Not for her. For the child asleep in the next room who didn't ask for any of this. You're going to tell the truth, I said. Publicly. To everyone. She swallowed. And then I'll help Noah. Not you. Him. With conditions. She looked up at me, stunned. Why? I stood and met her eyes. Because my husband was better than this mess, and I refused to let his name be buried under your lies. She agreed. Because she had no other option, and because, for the first time in her life, someone had finally called her bluff. The family dinner was set for Saturday night. Lauren insisted it was unnecessary. Said she'd already told the people who mattered. I didn't argue. I just told her the time and reminded her she'd agreed. Her silence on the other end of the phone told me she understood something she never had before. This wasn't her stage anymore. My parents arrived first. My mother brought a casserole out of habit, like food could cushion whatever was coming. She kept fussing with the sleeves of her sweater, asking questions that circled the point without ever touching it. What exactly is this about, Noemi? She asked for the 3rd time. Lauren's been crying all week. I looked at her steadily. Then tonight she can explain why. When Lauren walked in 20 minutes later, she looked smaller somehow. No dramatic makeup, no confident posture, just tired. She didn't bring Noah. That alone told me she was taking this seriously. We sat at the dining table, the same one Adam and I had refinished together during the pandemic. I'd placed a small voice recorder in the center, openly, not hidden. For everyone's protection, I said calmly, including yours. Lauren nodded. I took a breath. Lauren, you have something you need to tell Mom and Dad. Her hands shook as she folded them in her lap. I lied, she said. About everything. My mother frowned. What do you mean, lied? Lauren's voice cracked. Noah is not Adam's child. Adam and I never had an affair. I forged the will. The silence that followed felt heavier than grief. My father pushed back his chair slightly, like the air had been knocked out of him. You did what? He asked, voice low and dangerous. Lauren explained. The debt, the eviction notice, the medical bills, the fear. She didn't dramatize it. For once, she didn't try to soften it with excuses. I thought Noemi would give me money if I scared her enough, she said quietly. I thought she wouldn't fight back. My mother turned to me, eyes glossy. Is this true? Yes, I said. I have the documents, medical records, the real will, everything. My mother covered her mouth. You accused her husband of cheating, my father said to Lauren, his voice rising. 2 weeks after he was buried, Lauren started to cry again. I know. I hate myself for it. I watched my parents carefully, waiting. My mother reached for Lauren's hand. She was desperate, she said softly. People make mistakes when they're desperate. And there it was. The familiar excuse. I felt something inside me finally snap, not loudly, not dramatically, but cleanly. No, I said. This wasn't a mistake. This was a plan. My mother looked at me, startled. Noemi. She printed a fake will. She rehearsed a speech. She waited for a public moment when I'd be least able to defend myself, I continued. That's not desperation. That's intent. My father nodded slowly. She's right. Lauren didn't argue. I could press charges, I said then, keeping my voice even. Forgery and fraud. And if I did, I'd win. My mother gasped. You wouldn't. I could, I repeated. But I'm not going to. Everyone froze. Lauren looked up at me, stunned. You're not? No. But that doesn't mean there are no consequences. I laid out the terms. A trust fund for Noah strictly for his education and medical care. No cash handouts. Therapy. Financial counseling. Proof of employment. Boundaries. And if you ever try something like this again, I added, meeting her eyes, I won't hesitate next time. She nodded immediately. I understand. My mother looked conflicted. This feels harsh. I turned to her gently. What Lauren did was abuse, Mom. Emotional and legal abuse. And pretending otherwise is how we got here. My father cleared his throat. Your mother and I, we didn't handle things well over the years. Lauren surprised all of us by speaking up. They're right, she said. You always saved me. You never let me fail. And I thought that meant I'd always land on my feet, no matter what I did. My parents looked shaken. By the time the dinner ended, nothing felt resolved, but everything felt real. That night, after everyone left, I walked through the house alone. Adam's house. Our house. I stood in the doorway of the room we'd once planned to turn into a nursery. It was still empty, still quiet, still ours. I didn't feel victorious. I felt grounded. A year later, life looked different. Noah was thriving. The trust covered his treatments. Lauren kept her job. She stayed in therapy. We weren't close, but we were functional. My parents learned how to help without controlling. And me? I learned that love doesn't mean limitless tolerance. That grief doesn't make you weak, it makes you honest. And that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stay calm while someone else self-destructs. Adam used to say, prepare for the worst, hope for the best. I finally understood what he meant. 1 year after Adam died, I stood alone in the backyard just after sunrise. The house was quiet in that soft, almost sacred way it only ever gets before the world wakes up. The air smelled like fresh-cut grass and distant rain. Somewhere down the block, a sprinkler clicked on, rhythmic and steady life continuing whether I was ready for it or not. I used to think surviving grief meant moving on. Now I know it means learning how to carry it without letting it crush you. The trust for Noah was active. His medical bills were covered. He was learning to walk, wobbling across living room floors like he had nothing to fear, which, I realized, was exactly how it should be. Children deserve stability, not secrets. Care, not chaos. Lauren and I were different now. We weren't close. We probably never would be again. Some lines, once crossed, don't disappear just because someone apologizes. But she kept her word. Therapy. Work. No more lies. No more shortcuts. For the first time in her life, she was standing on her own feet, unsteady, but honest. My parents struggled at first, especially my mother. She mourned the version of our family she'd always pretended existed. But slowly, painfully, she learned that love doesn't mean shielding someone from consequences. Sometimes it means stepping back and letting reality do its work. As for me, I stopped apologizing for boundaries. I stopped explaining myself to people who benefited from my silence. And I stopped mistaking calm for weakness. What Lauren never understood, what so many people don't, is that grief sharpens you. It strips away the unnecessary. It leaves behind a core that knows exactly what matters and what doesn't. Adam prepared for the worst, not because he was cynical, but because he loved me. He knew that the people closest to us aren't always the safest. He knew that loyalty without boundaries is just another form of self-destruction. And he trusted me to do the right thing when the moment came. I think about him often, not with the raw, gasping pain of those early days, but with a quieter ache, the kind that comes with gratitude, with respect, with love that didn't end just because his heart did. If you take anything from my story, let it be this: document everything. Protect yourself, even from family, and never let guilt convince you to accept abuse. Forgiveness is optional. Boundaries are not. If you've ever been betrayed by someone who was supposed to protect you, if you've ever been told to be the bigger person at the cost of your own safety, you're not alone, and you're not wrong for choosing yourself. Thank you for staying with me through this story. There are more coming, real stories about real people navigating grief, betrayal, and the quiet strength it takes to rebuild a life. Until next time, take care of yourself.